This is section 4, transitive and intransitive verbs. So we started out primarily talking about action verbs, and those are the type of verb I imagine most of you feel comfortable with, because when you're younger and you learn about verbs, they say it's what you do. It's what somebody is doing. It's what a person is doing. It's what an animal is doing. So we can separate that down a little bit further into one of two categories for action verbs. So the first category is transitive verbs, and the other category is intransitive verbs. And it all depends on whether or not they're transferring action to another word in the sentence. And that sounds a little bit confusing until we put it into the context of some different sentences. So let's take a look at how transitive action verbs actually will work. So a transitive verb directs action towards someone or something that's named in the same sentence. So you've got your subject, which is the performer. You've got the verb, which is the action being performed. And then if that action affects something else directly in the sentence, sometimes that will work as a transfer of action, a transitive verb. So a really easy trick for this and a way to check without really going through the definition every time is to take that action verb and then ask whom or what after the verb. So we have that sentence, Kara read the book. Our verb is read, and I will suggest right now that from here on out, when we're doing sentence analysis, the first thing you look for is that verb. Don't look for your subject first, because there might be more than one noun in a sentence. So always look for the action. So we have our action read. We say, all right, what's the subject of this action? Who or what is doing the thing? That's Kara. And then we take this trick. Kara read what? What in the sentence is receiving the action of Kara reading? What answers the question of verb what? And in that particular sentence, the answer is book. Kara read book. So the noun that receives that action of the verb is something we call a direct object. It is an object because it is a noun, and it is a direct object because it is directly receiving the action. So Kara is reading. What is receiving that action directly is the book. If the sentence was Kara read a magazine, it's still the same process. Kara read what? What's receiving that action now? The magazine is receiving that action. Just before I started filming this video, I fed my cats. I am the subject of my sentence. My action is fed. And who is just receiving the direct action? Fed what? Fed cats. So let's take a look at a few more examples. So we ate the veggie burger. Our verb is ate. We're going to start with that. Who or what is performing the action in that particular sentence is we. And then we ask ourselves, we ate what? We ate burger, or we ate veggie burger. Direct object, receiving the action of eating directly. My sister answered the phone when I called. Our verb is answered. Our subject is sister. She's the one performing that action. And then we can ask ourselves, my sister answered what? What is receiving the action of her answering? And in this case, the answer to that question is phone. So the direct object of that action verb answered is phone. It is directly receiving that action. So if we take a look at the breakdown of this sentence, the students will eat their lunch in my classroom. This case, we've got a verb phrase, will eat. Eat is our main verb. Will is our helping verb because it's giving us that tense. It's going to happen later. My subject is students. They are who is performing that action. And then again, we take the action of eating and we transfer it to something else in the sentence. What is receiving that action directly? Or you can ask yourself, students will eat what? In this case, it's student will eat lunch. Now, if you just look at this sentence very quickly, you might have just seen classroom at the end and gone, oh, I wonder if that's the direct object. I know that's a noun. But if you break down the action of eating, we're not eating the classroom. And if we go through the process of asking verb what, the students will eat what, they would not be eating the classroom, hopefully. They would be eating their lunch. The classroom is just where that action is going to take place. Mr. Gellert should have been learning verbs. So again, we start with the verb, and in this case, we have a verb phrase. Remember, they can be up to 4 words. Main verb, learning, should have been is the helping verb part of it. It's giving us tone and tense. Our subject is Mr. Gellert. He's who should have been learning. And then we ask ourselves, all right, what is receiving the action of learning? Or you could go, Mr. Gellert should have been learning what? So our direct object is going to be verbs. It is receiving the action of our verb learning. Should have been learning what? And we can answer that question. Now, an intransitive verb is just the other kind of action verb. So an intransitive verb does not direct action towards someone or something named in the same sentence. It is an action verb that stands alone. It doesn't mean you're not going to have additional details. So be careful. Direct objects answer verb what or verb whom. They don't answer when, they don't answer where, they don't answer how. Those are our modifier questions when it comes to the verb. So be careful. The students wrote quickly. Our verb is wrote. Our subject is students. If we ask ourselves, students wrote what? We can't answer that question. We can only answer students wrote how. So even though there is a word that comes after the verb, it's not receiving the action of writing. It's just answering how the students actually wrote. So wrote as our action verb is just on its own. The students are writing. We can't answer wrote what from that particular sentence. Now, we could add information to the sentence to make it a transitive verb. If we said the students wrote essays, then we would be able to answer verb what, but in this case, it's only verb how. And so this is an intransitive verb because there is no transfer of action from the student's writing to something that's receiving that action. So if we look at a couple example sentences, we ate at the new restaurant. Our verb is ate. We have a subject, we, but we cannot answer ate what or ate whom. We can only answer ate where. So the action of eating isn't being transferred. The restaurant is not being eaten by we in the sentence. I answered tersely, vocab word. Our verb is answered. I am the subject. And I can't say answered what. I didn't answer a question. I didn't answer the phone. I'm just answering how. I'm answering tersely. So that action of answering isn't being transferred to anything else in that sentence. So if we look at the cat sleep all day long on my bed, we've got our subject cats and our verb sleep. We cannot answer sleep what or sleep whom. We can only answer when they do it, which is all day long, and where, which is on my bed. And I will give you a little hint for those of you that are actually watching this video and not just copying notes from the slide. Sleep is always an intransitive verb. You cannot sleep what, you cannot sleep whom. You can only sleep when, where, how. So if you ever see the verb sleep in a sentence, and I say, is this transitive or intransitive? You don't have to do a lot of work there. You're just going to know that it is intransitive. It's one of the few verbs that actually does not ever take a direct object. Now we can look at what we talked about earlier with that verb of wrote. So we have 2 sentences here that are almost identical. There's just one change after the verb. So the first sentence, the students wrote quickly versus the students wrote essays. We have the same exact verb, wrote. We have the same exact subject, students, but one of those verbs is transitive and one of those verbs is intransitive, even though they are the exact same verb. In the first one, we have wrote how as our question. How did they write? Which is not a transfer of action. That is not a direct object. So the students wrote quickly is an intransitive verb sentence, but the students wrote essays, where we can answer the question of wrote what, the action of writing is being transferred to the essay. We then have a transitive verb sentence with wrote with a direct object, essays.